All right, everybody, we're going to give it another minute or two for folks to join us, and then we'll get started. For those who just joined, we're going to give it another minute and let other folks join us, and then we'll get started. All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Center of Excellence for Infant and Early Childhood Mental Health Consultations Conference, Equity from the Start. My name is Jennifer Drake Croft, and I will serve as your session moderator. I am joined by Chantel Campbell, who will serve as our technical host. The session is being recorded, and transcription is available through the Zoom platform. Should you have any questions, please feel free to relay your questions to the chat. We're going to have time at the end of this session for your questions and answers with the presenters. So I'll let them know when they have about 5 minutes left so that we can make sure to squeeze those in. That said, I'd like to pass it over to Karen Robbins and Maggie Mosca, who are with the Chaddock Caregiver Connections program. They'll be conducting a workshop today entitled Infusing DEIB Lens, Growth Edges and Celebrations. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it on over to you all.
Thank you, Jennifer. We're so excited to be here with you all today. We know that there was a lot of opportunities for you, so we're excited to have you here. But I'm going to go ahead and share our slides and get right into our time together. So just some quick introductions. Like Jennifer said, my name is Maggie Mosca, and I am the current director of Caregiver Connections. I was an infant and early childhood mental health consultation for about 10 years in Northern Illinois. I also, during that time, did a variety of trainings. I'm a social worker by trade. I also have experience as a therapist in early intervention. And I will turn it over to Karen for her introduction.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Karen Robbins. I am currently the Associate Director of Program Development and DEIB with Caregiver Connections. Prior to joining Caregiver Connections, I worked as an infant and early childhood mental health consultant in Cook County, Illinois, with Illinois Action for Children. I am an alumni of Erickson Institute Masters of Social Work program. I have work experience as a clinical therapist in foster care, residential placement with Bar Harris Children's Grief Center in Chicago, and with Chicago Public Schools Head Start program. I feel very passionately about infusing a DEIB lens into infant and early childhood mental health consultation, as well as broadening mental health access to at-risk communities.
Thanks, Karen. Okay, so just to take an opportunity to orient everyone to the time we're going to have this afternoon and what our learning objectives are. So initially, we want to share our story and our journey to implementing programmatic infrastructure with the DEIB lens. And then we want to really give you an opportunity to reflect on your own journey and your own areas for growth and structure. And we want to share some of the tools that we have used to assess our current place along that journey and share that with you in hopes that that can give you an opportunity to reflect and grow in your own practice. And then lastly, we want to give you review with you goals for growth that we have, and with the hope of being able to lay the foundation to build your own action plans. And we'll be sharing some of those documents along the way for our time. We just want to first highlight a few shared agreements in the space. So we want you to be able to take care of yourselves and our shared space. We know that, you know, you're getting a lot of information today, that we just want to make sure that you're able to do that while you're here with us. We want to create a learning community and then actively participate when there are opportunities to do so. So first, in really talking about why are we looking at our history? Because in order to move forward, we have to look back. And so why do we need to do this? We really have to do this because there's so much power in doing so and so much to be gained for it, even if that's uncomfortable. And just as our title reflects, it's an opportunity to learn and to grow and to celebrate. So what is the history of Caregiver Connections? So we are the largest early childhood mental health consultation initiative in Illinois. We provide consultation to childcare providers, and that's including traditional centers, family childcare providers, family friend and neighbors, faith-based programs. Basically, the programs that we do not provide consultation to are Illinois State Board of Education funded preschools and Head Start. So we've been in existence for almost 20 years now, which is something that we're really proud of. And the way that our program functions is we are funded through DHS, and Chaddock is the grantor of that. And then we subcontract with agencies throughout the state, primarily in mental health, community mental health agencies, and some resource and referral agencies. And a reason why that is important, especially when looking at infusing a DEIB lens, is knowing that our consultants are in subcontracting agencies where there's different cultures, different priorities. It's something that we have to think about. And just like in consultation, you're holding all the different stakeholders' perspectives. And in our role as the grantor for DHS, we provide fiscal and programmatic oversight to our subcontracting agencies that employ our consultants directly. So to know how our program functions, we also want to understand what is happening in our state. So this is just a snapshot of the children that are being excluded from programs based on their race or ethnicity. And I would venture to guess that most of us are familiar with Walter Gilliam's study. And so this is reflected in our state and what we've seen between 2017 and 2020. A study was done, and this was also the time when a law was put into place in Illinois that children could not be expelled in order to without a planned transition. And obviously from this data and the work that we're doing, we know that it's still happening. And before we get into the work of Walter Gilliam, I would like to take a second and have some polls, because we also want to understand who our audience is here today. So if we could go ahead and launch the first poll. So we want to understand what your current role is in your work. So let's see, we have about still about 63% participated. $72, we'll get another second. Okay, can we launch the results of that first poll? Okay, so about 44% of you are consultants, 44% are administrators, and 11% are other. Okay, so we also, I'm sorry, we also want to understand how long your program has been in existence. And so if we could share that next poll. Here we go. So if you could take a second and answer that to just help us understand who's with us during this time. So we're at about 54% participation. Oh, it's climbing. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and end the poll, share results. So we have about 13% are 0 to 5 years, 38% are 10 to 15, 38% are 15 to 20, and then 13% are 20 plus. So quite a bit of experience in this space here. So we can go ahead and take down the poll. So I am going to go ahead and turn it over to Karen so she can talk about information in regards to Walter Gilliam's study. So Karen, I'll turn that over to you.
Okay. Next slide, please. Okay, Walter Gilliam is a researcher out of Yale University in Connecticut, and he did an extensive nationwide research project to look at early suspension and expulsion in a preschool environment. And these were some of the factors that as a result of the study, he was able to make assumptions about that these expulsions and suspension denied access to early education for our youngest learners. It looked over root causes that could actually be addressed perhaps prior to suspension and expulsion. And it further calcified biases regarding which children were served and which children were expelled. And we also learned from that study that early suspension and expulsion at the preschool level can lead to academic failure and disengagement of children from the school environment, lead to early dropout rates, and even lead to rates of increased law enforcement contact, incarceration, and for minority students in general, created sort of a school to prison pipeline at much larger rates than other ethnic groups. Next slide, please. So there were many societal events, including the social arrest that occurred following the murder of George Floyd and the systemic impact of COVID-19 pandemic on children, families, and their respective communities, as well as the alarming results from Walter Gilliam's research on early suspension and expulsion, serving as the beginning of the school to prison pipeline for minority children that influenced our decision to integrate a deeper DEIB lens into our program operations and consultation services. Our goal overall was to reduce the statistical number of children being expelled from early learning and preschool programs based not only on a child's behavior, but potentially other factors that could come into play with how teachers particularly view a child and their own unconscious bias regarding that child, that child's family, or the larger community in which that child and family reside. Next slide, please. So as a result of our expansion, we now have a new organizational chart, which is depicted on this slide. Joss Carlson serves as our executive director. The chart also includes my new role as Associate Director of Program and Development and DEI, which is the first brown box you see to your left. My role was created in 2022, and it was in addition to the two associate directors that were always ready in place, one of operations and one of workforce development. Each of us as associate directors provide technical assistance to our mental health consultants and their supervisors throughout the state of Illinois within 3 geographic regions. And those regions are divided into distinct service district areas by clusters of counties throughout the state. Next slide, please. As Caregiver Connections, our Associate Director of Workforce Development, Jenna Kelly's vision led to the creation of a peer-led team called Brave Idea to focus on race and culture as it applies to infant and early childhood mental health consultation. 2 members of our statewide mental health consultant team were designated as the co-leaders for that team, and each served for a 4-year tenure. Mental health consultants applied via formal application and essay to become members of large of the team for a 2-year tenure. The Brave Ideal team would be responsible for hosting presentations and activities within our monthly team meetings, as well as our statewide quarterly meetings, and then also hold discussions in affinity groups, which served as a safe place for people with different ethnic and racial composition to discuss their lived experiences relative to their racial identity. Next slide. In addition to our Brave Idea team, in May of 2023, we also administered our first mental health consultant DEI survey with the following goals that are outlined on the slide. And we were so fortunate that the response rate for the survey was 86%. Our consultants' willingness to engage in this process with us provided a better understanding of our program's culture and commitment to a fair and inclusive workplace. The survey included domains that covered our mission and values, our organizational structure and leadership, a sense of belonging and psychological safety, professional growth and development, and our peer-led Brave Idea team's affinity groups, as well as open-ended questions and demographic questions. And you might ask, why did we choose to survey our actual consultant pool? And our thoughts were the survey responses would help us to evaluate the cohesiveness between our mission, vision, values, and improve our diversity in our workforce representation. We also wanted to improve our overall organizational culture, foster connectiveness and create a sense of belonging and improve our employee retention. Our goal was to take the data that we gained from this survey and then integrate it into a comprehensive strategy to cover all of our department practices and operations, as well as long-term, we'd like to attract more funding for the DEIB efforts that we have been engaged in over the evolution of our team. Next slide. We have identified the following areas as avenues for potential growth with our program in terms of infusing a DEIB lens, including gathering and analyzing data regarding the impact of our consultation services and our success at increasing the capacity of our providers to be reflective about their own unconscious bias and to work more effectively with the children and families in their program. We have recently launched a post-consultation service survey and revised our annual provider survey to begin looking at this data. Our long-term goal would be to create avenues to share the results with our statewide partners. And we would also like to implement a biannual mental health consultant survey to continue to measure the sense of belonging and the culture and employee satisfaction with our adherence to new policies and procedures around DEIB.
Karen, can I add one piece here? Do you mind?
No.
Just to know also the post-consultation survey and the annual provider survey, we're looking at provider outcomes as well as satisfaction in relation to receiving consultation. And so one of the really important parts in the development of this survey was understanding that the work that consultants do are supporting providers in understanding and exploring their unconscious and implicit biases. We also wanted to understand the parallels between the consultant survey and the support and the structure that we're offering to consultants in our program and how that's affecting the way that they are providing consultation. So in creating these, we're really hoping to be able to look at that data and strengthen those pieces and connect them as well.
So several of the challenges that we have faced as a program as we have moved more to a DEIB focus across all of our programmatic areas is that we have found that DEIB work is siloed on a statewide and national basis. So there is not one state or national organization with the mission of integrating DEIB work or lens or procedures and policies into infant and early childhood mental health consultation. Also, there is a lack of a statewide here in Illinois or national leader to develop goals, objectives, and performance standards for infant and early childhood programs around DEIB. And there is also a lack of assessment tools for measuring program effectiveness and outcomes on either a statewide or national basis, which hence most programs operate very differently, and it will make it very difficult to start analyzing data without any national standards or goals or objectives that programs should be following state by state. And I feel like it would also inhibit the ability to look at trends statewide and nationally if there are no national standards. So right now, everybody is kind of doing this work independently. state to state based on funding, based on how much they want to integrate DEIB into their program, based on, you know, the interests of maybe their shareholders as well in this. So it can look very different from state to state. I would say is the current landscape we're in right now. Next slide, please. So are we going to proceed with this as an activity?
Yeah, we have time to go into breakout rooms with partners for about, let's see, I'd say 5 minutes, and then we can come back.
Okay, so we would like to put you in pairs in breakout rooms at this time just to discuss these two questions. First, what, if any, of our journey up to this point resonates with you personally or your program? And then based on some of the challenges and celebrations we're sharing, what opportunities for growth and celebrations do you see in your own programs?
So I'm going to go ahead and welcome back, everybody.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. So I hope that was enough time for you to discuss either one or both questions. But now that you've had an opportunity to pair in a small group and look at these questions, we feel like the best next steps would be, next slide, please, Maggie. After considering your program's celebrations to date and where you think the growth actions are, we would recommend creating SMART goals that are specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time sensitive to support your program's overall development around DEIB. So on the next couple slides, I'm going to just give you sort of a timeline of the evolution of our program in terms of DEIB and provide you with examples of a strategic plan framework and an outline that goes even deeper to help you reach the target time frame on your strategic plan framework, to measure the progress of goals that you set, as well as give you, again, that time frame for completion of your objectives in terms of making adjustments to your program. Next slide. So the evolution of our Caregiver Connections program started in 2020 with the peer-led Brave Ideal team that I talked about earlier. And IDEAL stands for inclusion, diversity, equity, and awareness. And that peer-led team within Caregiver Connections, as I stated, was totally voluntarily, and the members worked toward increasing the capacity of our consultants around race and culture, their own biases, where they were on the racial continuum, and hopefully providing a framework to help them move into being able to provide training and consultation around DEI topics. So after the completion of our Brave Idea team in 2020, my role was created in 2022 as Associate Director of Program Development in DEI. Once my role was in place during the 22-23 fiscal year, we sought outside consultation for both teams with the Indigo Cultural Center in Arizona. We also used the global diversity and inclusion benchmarks, which set standards for organizations around the globe into having a substantial and sustainable DEI program based on your areas of operations. And in our acknowledgements, I have provided links for the Global Diversity and Inclusion Benchmarks Manual, and our handouts will include the two frameworks that I'm going to go over in the next couple slides. We also developed a logic model looking at program development and DEI and what inputs we needed as a program and what were the expected outputs from working on this. And again, we lastly, earlier this year, did the mental health consultant employee engagement survey that I've also gone over. Next slide, please. So this is an example of a strategic plan that we developed internally as a program. And what is highlighted is one of my particular strategic goals as the DEI Associate Director. The area of focus, which is building communities, is aligned with the area of focus of our grantor, Chaddock. So that is a goal for Chaddock for the fiscal year, is building community. So I then narrowed that down as the program development associate director to a goal to help professionals within our team. So the goal, the objective of growing professionals is to develop and implement capacity within our workforce to be able to engage in sensitive conversations around DEIB issues through intentional training and consultation with our providers. That would specifically be my department goal in alignment with Chaddock's larger goal of building communities. And I would accomplish this by strengthening the consultant's abilities to provide these services, starting by developing, to go back to the previous, starting by developing a library of trainings on DEIB topics, with some prerequisite training for our consultants on also how to have sensitive conversations around DEIB. And then I am setting a completion date of December 2024 for this overall goal to be achieved. Okay, next slide. So to narrow down my department goal either further, I would further outline my strategy in a shorter time frame to meet the target completion date of 12/24. And I would do that by setting a projected time frame of 10/31, which is well before that 12/24 goal. And again, pulling that information from the prior strategic framework, I would start by analyzing our current training library for previous trainings available for use immediately. And then we would determine trainings we would need to develop over the course of the fiscal year and what specific topics we would need to develop trainings around. Something I did not list on that as progress would also be to survey our current provider pool to determine what topics they would like DEIB training on. Get that information back, compare it to our current library, and then we would determine where we need to develop new trainings to meet the needs of our providers.
Karen, do you want to speak to the template of this document that is in the handouts so participants are aware of that?
Yes, so the template for both the strategic DEI plan, which is sort of the larger goal identification. Maggie, could you go back one slide just so I can point? This template for this guide is in the handouts, as well as, you can move forward to the next slide. Thank you. This template as well. So once you determine what your larger goals are, you can narrow them down even further and then set sort of intermittent projected timelines to reach them that are in alignment with whatever your completion date is. And then next slide. Thank you. So Maggie and I have included our contact information for anyone that is currently in process of integrating a DEIB lens into your overall program operations. We'd be happy to share with you, the successes we've had, or, recommendations based on the steps we've made. So please, jot this information down. You'll also have access to it on the slides if you would like any further support. This slide is just acknowledgement of the research done by Walter Gilliam, if you'd like to look closer at that. One of the slides we had specifically looked at the Illinois expulsion law, and you can look at that information through the last bullet point, which is Kate Zinzer. And there is a link for the Global Diversity and Inclusion Benchmarks, which provide an overview of what organizations should be focusing on to sustain a DEIB program long-term. And it is downloadable as well. It's a pretty hefty manual, but it is downloadable.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for a wonderful presentation. And I just want to invite folks now to either take themselves off mute or put in the chat any questions that you may have for our presenters. Not seeing anything pop in the chat yet. Give it one more minute here. Well, while folks are maybe thinking about what they want to put in as a question, do you have anything else that you want to share with the group?
Just, I think that, the evolution has been a process and something that we find important to celebrate successes, that we don't always or often take the time to do that, and just how valuable and important the work is, and how we've seen great opportunities that came with that growth. So other than that, I don't have anything else to add. Karen, do you?
No, other than I think infusing a DEI lens over entire program is an ongoing process. You can never get comfortable where you are, because it just opens up so many other opportunities and what you could be doing, or where you could be gathering data, or how do we want to strengthen not only our consultants, but our supervisor pool. So it is, I think, a process that is constantly evolving and changes as focus of your program changes, or your client base changes, or just resources you have, or additional funding you get. So there's never an end date.
Yes, it's a journey, not a destination. Love that. All right. Well, we have had a few questions pop up in the chat, so I'll go ahead and read them aloud. The first is, what are your recommendations for finding diverse consultants in rural areas when there aren't many consultants there in general?
One of the goals in our expansion was expanding the parameters for qualifications for consultants. Because we had been in existence so long, there was no changes in those parameters. So we decided to align with our state model. And primarily we had consultants in the past and some currently who are QMHPs, but expanding for different opportunities in education really allowed us to expand our pool. I do think, given that, Illinois is such a different landscape in terms of, urban to rural to suburban, that definitely lends itself in its own challenges, especially in more rural areas. But that was one way that we were able to expand our candidate pool.
Awesome. And the other one is just a comment that says this is a great way to look back at all of the great work that's been done by Caregiver Connections. So just a shout out to you all there. And I don't think we have any other questions. So if we want to wrap up early, we can.
Sure. Thank you, everybody. We appreciate your time.
Thank you both. We appreciate you. Have a great rest of your day. Okay.